that I'll ask you to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending upon what you think about things. There'll be other times I'll ask you to raise your hand. And so it's easy to do those things if you have your video showing. Again, so for those of you who are just logging in, I encourage you, if you're comfortable, to go ahead and share your video. If you want to be able to do to join in the participation without your video showing, the other way to do it is if you use, there's a little reactions button, and you can give me a thumbs up like that instead. You can also give a clap, so there's other ways that you can do it. So you can certainly use the reactions button if you don't want to show your video. But if you're comfortable showing your video, I appreciate that. And so again, for those of you just logging in, I'm Dr. Andrew Budson. I'm your speaker for this evening. And I think we're going to have fun tonight. I appreciate all of you technologically savvy people who have already logged in a few minutes before the hour. We usually wait till a few minutes after the hour to get the program launched, just because sometimes people have technical difficulties in logging in, but I appreciate you all logging in right on time or a minute or two early. Well, I don't know where in the Boston area or beyond you all are in, but it's a beautiful day here in Newton, where I am right now. It was a beautiful day in Jamaica Plain when I was at work. And everybody's coming on board. And so I'll just say again that if people feel comfortable in sharing their video, we will be having some participation. I'll be having people give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down and raising their hand at different points of the presentation. But if you don't want to share your video, you can use the little reactions tab to give me a thumbs up to indicate the same types of things. So you can do it either way. It's just fine. Now in the chat, Samrana, our Boston University Alzheimer's Disease Research Center program manager, has put in a Google Docs form. And this is a very short form to fill out if you would like to learn more information about the work that we do at the Boston University Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. If you would like to join to get our newsletter distributed to you each year. If you would be interested in finding out sort of some of the studies that we're doing, or just to sort of make contact with us, we'd love it if you would fill out the Google Docs form. It just makes it a little easier for us to keep track of you. So good. So more and more people are coming on. It's 5:31. We're just going to wait just 2 or 3 more minutes as people are coming on. I know sometimes people have a little bit of technical difficulty, so we give people a few minutes grace period. And again, I appreciate all of you who were able to log in on time. So I'll go over one other sort of technical point. So if you want to make sure if you want my video, I'm your speaker tonight, Dr. Andrew Budson. If you want to have my video be sort of front and center, you can change the view, which is usually in the top right-hand corner, but it depends on the device you're using. You can change it to speaker. And then the other thing to do is to pin my video, and that should make me sort of front and center, so that you'll always be hearing the person that's speaking. So good. Good. We're just going to wait 2 more minutes and then we'll be getting going. And again, for those people who have just joined us, if you feel comfortable showing your video, that would be great, because we do have some participation at different parts of the program. We do like a thumbs up and thumbs down for different parts, and raising hand for other parts. If you don't want to show your video, feel free to use the reactions tab, and you can give me a thumbs up there as well. So we're gonna all keep our fingers crossed that the bulk of the COVID is behind us. I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but I'm hoping, I've got my fingers crossed, that things are going to continue to get better. I do think we have to continue to be vigilant about wearing masks and things like that as we get into the colder weather, and it's a little harder to spend as much time outside. We all still want to be socially active, as I'll talk about a little bit in the program, but we need to stay safe and, you know, wear our masks and things like that. All right. Well, I think I'm gonna go ahead and get started. It's just about 5 after our starting time, and I think a few more people may join us, but I want to reward all of you who signed in on time and not punish you for coming on time. So again, I'm Dr. Andrew Budson. I'm your speaker for this evening, and I lead the education and outreach programs at the Boston University Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And I'm joined this evening by Samrana Bertrand. Samrana, give a wave. She is our education program manager, and by Roisha Young, who is our, give a wave, Roisha, and she is our recruitment coordinator. And thanks, Claire, for waving back. I like that. That's what I want to see. I want to see lots of participation. So, so we, along with Dr. Kate Turk, we're sort of the team who are leading the efforts to try to both let the community know some of the things that we're finding out about memory loss and Alzheimer's disease, and what we can do to keep our memories as strong as possible. And we're also working to try to do more research. The research is critically important so that we can have new treatments to both help people who have Alzheimer's disease. How can they manage things better? How can their families manage better? But also, how can we develop new treatments to try to reduce the impact of this terrible disease, new medications that can potentially slow down the disease. Now, if you'd like to learn more about our center, you'd like to join our newsletter, which is only sent out a couple times a year. We also do have some more frequent sort of say hello, you know, just sort of like hello updates of things that might be of interest to you. In the chat is a Google Doc. And if you want to click on that, you can click on that, and then you can fill the form out. Or if it's not a convenient time to do that, You can also just put your email or your phone number in the chat, and we'll shoot you an email or a phone number. And if you go to the chat function, there's both to, yes, we will resend that. That should have gone out, but here, I just copied it again. So it should be showing up. Rachel, do you see it now? Let's see. So good. Okay, she does. Okay, good. Okay, you don't have to unmute, Rachel. I just wanted to make sure we could see it. Good. So, okay, yeah. So do go ahead and fill that up. We'd love to have you join our newsletter and get you involved, or your loved ones, or just whatever level of involvement you're interested in. We'd love that if you'd like to do that. Okay. So Samrana, Roisha, are there any announcements I'm forgetting? Or did I cover them all? I got them, thumbs up. All right, good. Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about myself. So again, I'm Dr. Andrew Budson.
Are we going to ask everyone if they're okay with recording?
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Roisha. So there were a few people who couldn't join today, and we wanted to know if people felt comfortable with us recording today's session. And we only will move forward if people are comfortable with that. So I see a few people nodding. If anybody who's not comfortable, can you either shout out or type into the chat that you don't want us to record it? Okay, so thank you, Risha, for reminding me. So I think we'll go ahead and we'll record it. And so I was educated, I went to college at Haverford College, a small college outside of Philadelphia. And then I went to Harvard Medical School. And after getting my MD, I did my medical training, my residency at Brigham and Women's Hospital in neurology. And then I did a fellowship at Brigham and Women's as well in behavioral neurology and dementias. And I then moved over to the VA and Boston University, where I joined the BU Alzheimer's Disease Center. And I've spent approximately the last 20 years of my life doing research on understanding how memory breaks down in Alzheimer's disease, and also taking care of patients with Alzheimer's disease. And if any of you or your loved ones are interested in a clinical evaluation, if you're a veteran, I'd love to see you at VA Boston. The clinic is on the Jamaica Plain campus, although we're actually doing just about everything virtually at the moment, so very easy to get to. And if you're not a veteran, I can see you at a small clinic in Newton at the Boston Center for Memory. So if people are interested in clinical care, I can help you with that there. So today's presentation, I'm going to throw a slide or two up. I'm going to be going sort of back and forth between showing some slides, just plain talking like now, and doing a little bit of reading from my book. So these are my current titles. So I'm the Chief of Cognitive and Behavioral Neurology at the VA in Boston, Professor of Neurology at Boston University, Director of Education, as I mentioned, at the Alzheimer's Disease Center at BU, and also a lecturer in neurology at Harvard Medical School. My only disclosures are that I like to write books. And so I will be talking about this book today, The 7 Steps to Managing Your Memory. And the good news is that if you're interested in what I'm talking about and you want to know more about it, you don't need to buy the book. You actually can get the book out of the library. It's actually, I'm pleased to say, it's in just about every single library in the Boston area. And The Boston area is also very good about interlibrary loans. So even if it's not at your local branch, I'm sure they can get it. And most libraries will also allow you to download the ebook or the audiobook if you're interested in. And if you do want a copy for yourself, you can get it at your local bookstore or by using Amazon or barnesandnobles.com, all those usual sources. So this is the book that I'll be talking about. And I'm going to talk about all these different steps to managing your memory. But we are going to begin by getting your views on some common memory problems, okay? And so I'm going to actually do a little bit of reading from the preface about some common scenarios. And as I read through each of these scenarios, if you say to yourself, well, that's normal. That's just what happens to somebody when they get a little older. Yeah, they have that little trouble with their memory. Give me a thumbs up to say that you think that's just fine. If on the other hand, you say to yourself, wait a minute, that could be the start of Alzheimer's disease or dementia, give me a thumbs down to say, no, I don't think that's normal. And if you are using the reactions tab and your video is not on, I want you to give me a thumbs up if you think it's normal, and just don't show me anything if you think it's not normal, okay? Or if you like, you could give me the open mouth if you think it's not normal, if you have that option on your reactions tab. I'm not sure all of them do. Okay, all right, so here's the first scenario. So you walk into a room to get something and you forget why you're there. What do you think? Is that normal, not normal? All right, I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. I want to see a thumbs up from everyone on that one. That one is normal. Woo, thank God, right? If that one wasn't normal, we would all be in trouble, right? Okay, all right. So here's the next one. You're having trouble remembering some of the events of your life, such as your wedding. What do you think? Normal, not normal? People are not sure about that one. Oh, a lot of thumbs down. Ken and Martha, very cool with the, or very cool, I should say, with the O sign. That's great. Okay, how about this one? When you are driving and not paying attention, you take one or more wrong turns and you end up somewhere you did not intend to be. What do you think? Normal, not normal? Seeing some thumbs down on that one. Risha's not quite sure. Yeah, not quite sure. Anita's not quite sure. All right, how about this one here? You have difficulty finding your car in a parking lot. What do you think? Is that normal? Is that not normal? Most people are like, I hope that one's normal, right? Okay, and here about my all-time favorite, your family tells you that you've asked that question before. Is that normal? What do you think? Claire gave a big thumbs down. Ken and Martha think that's okay. Ken and Martha are split decision. People are not quite sure about that one. Well, some of you may have been wondering, well, are those things normal or not? So it is my job this evening to empower you all with the knowledge so that you will know not only whether those things are normal or not, but also other memory problems that you may be experiencing or you may see in a loved one. And in addition, we're going to go through everything there is about how do you keep your memory strong. But before we do that, I want to introduce you to two characters that we have written into the book. Now, we wrote these characters into the book both to illustrate the 7 steps to managing your memory and also to make the book a little bit more engaging. And although there's lots of straight information in the book besides these little stories, when I do read from the book, it will be from the stories because it's a little bit more fun, a little bit more engaging. So here is the first story. This is about Sue. That could have been embarrassing, Sue thinks to herself. She was halfway through lunch with one of her closest friends before the name of her friend's husband came to her. How could I have forgotten? She thinks again. She was able to remember everything about him except his name. Now, Sue was able to cover for this little memory lapse. In fact, she has become quite good at covering for memory lapses such as these and laughing it off when the lapse was noticed. Sue herself, however, isn't laughing. Sue is worried about her memory. Worried, in fact, is a bit of an understatement. She is absolutely terrified that she is developing Alzheimer's disease. She just turned 80, the same age that one of her friends, Mary, was diagnosed with the disease. Now, Sue has not mentioned her concerns to her friends or her children. Her children would only worry and overreact, and she doesn't need that. Her friends wouldn't be interested about hearing her concerns either. It would only make them anxious about their own similar memory difficulties. Or worse, they would start to treat her like an invalid and stop including her in their social activities. Sue thinks about some of her other memory lapses. Just yesterday, she walked downstairs to the basement and could not remember for the life of her what she was going down to get. It was only when she walked back to the kitchen that she remembered the roll of paper towels that she needed, which she then successfully retrieved. Now, she doesn't have difficulty remembering what happened yesterday or the week before, but she finds it quite difficult to remember some details from her childhood. Is that normal? Sue isn't sure. So that's a little bit about Sue. And now I'm going to introduce you to Jack. Now, Jack has just come from his local community lodge where Sam, one of his buddies, said, Jack, you should get your memory checked out. I'm worried that you're developing Alzheimer's disease or dementia. Could he be right? Jack thinks about Sam's words. He's not sure whether he should thank Sam or slug him. Part of him wants to do both. Deep down, he knows that Sam is trying to be helpful, but he has a lot of nerve. Sure, Jack knows he has some memory problems, but who his age doesn't? Just because Sam's wife has dementia, all of a sudden he thinks he's a goddamn doctor. Not that the doctors know very much about memory problems from what Jack could tell. Sam had to take Mary to her doctor 4 times before the doctor actually did anything. Jack considers his memory. He didn't think anything was wrong, at least not any more than with anyone else his age. He is 72 after all. At least half his friends have similar difficulties remembering what they did the day before or were going to be doing the following day. The more Jack thinks about it, the more he thinks his memory probably is normal. Better than normal, in fact. How many people his age can list off their buddies from high school and the make, model, and year of the cars that they drove? Still, Jack feels unsettled. Sam stressed that the reason he was bringing it up is there were medications that Jack could take that could improve his memory. He doesn't want to be stupid. After all, he's never been one to run away from a problem. He'd rather stand and confront it. Perhaps he should call his doctor. So that's a little bit about our 2 characters. And now we're going to dive into the 7 steps to managing your memory. And we are going to begin with step 1, which is learn what is normal memory. So let's say that there's a piece of information that you want to remember, like someone's name. Well, in order to remember it, the first thing we need is we need our file clerk to be able to go in from the outside world and retrieve that piece of information. Now, the file clerk is actually a part of your brain. It's your frontal lobes right behind your forehead. And it's the job of the frontal lobe file clerk, again, to pull that information in from the outside world and to put it into the physical file cabinet. Well, that's good, but guess what? As we all get older, our frontal lobe file clerk is getting older too. And I'm going to give you an analogy as to what happens to our older file clerk. So one thing that happens is she does not hear quite as well as she used to. What? And because of that, she may need to have information repeated a couple of times in order to get a hold of it so she can then put it into the file cabinet. Now, another thing that can happen is she may not move quite as quickly as she used to. And because of that, it may take her longer to walk over to the file cabinet and to be able to pull out the memory that we're looking for. The third thing that happens as she gets a little older is she does not see quite as well as she used to. So you can imagine that as she's trying to retrieve a memory, she's sort of squinting up and down like, what is that? She may need a hint or a cue in order to find the right piece of information. But importantly, as long as the information made it into the file cabinet, it should be able to be retrieved, even if it takes a little bit of time or a hint or a cue. So in a nutshell, those are the three changes that you see with normal aging. Information may need to be repeated, may take a little bit of time to get it out, and you may need a hint or a cue to retrieve it. So now we're going to turn to step 2. Determine if your memory is normal. And we're going to continue with our filing system analogy, but now we're going to focus in on the file cabinet. Now, the file cabinet is another part of your brain. It's called the hippocampus, and it's deep in your temporal lobes. So if you put your fingers on your temples, it's just deep in there. And the problem in Alzheimer's is that Alzheimer's damages and ultimately destroys the file cabinet. And the way I think about it is, imagine if there's a big hole in the file cabinet. Well, if there's a big hole in the file cabinet, you can have the best, most efficient file clerk in the world, pulling in information from the outside world, putting it into the file cabinet. But what's going to happen? It's going to disappear into the hole, never to be found again. And when that happens, even when information is repeated, even if you give a little bit of time or a hint or a cue, the information cannot be recovered. And when that happens, we call it rapid forgetting. And rapid forgetting is never normal. It should always be evaluated. Okay, so we're now going to catch up with Sue to learn a little bit more about some of the other problems that can occur in Alzheimer's disease. Now, Sue is meeting Sam for a cup of coffee. you may recall that Sam's wife, Mary, who is a friend of Sue's, has Alzheimer's. So Sue was meeting up with Sam to learn a little bit more about the disease. How did it start with Mary? Sam looks closely at Sue, seeing the worry in her eyes. Well, everybody's different, but I think with Mary, it began when she got lost while she was driving. Mind you, I didn't think it was a big deal at first. I just knew it would take her a long time to go from one place to another. Looking back, I also began to realize that she was traveling to fewer places. It was as if the circle of where she would go was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. First, she didn't drive in the city. Then she didn't drive on the highway. Then she didn't drive anywhere new. I didn't really worry about it at first. I mean, who really wants to fight the traffic in the city or on the highways anyways? But the red flag to me was when I got a call from her doctor's office at 2 o'clock in the afternoon saying she had not shown up for her 1 o'clock appointment. So now I'm starting to get worried. Did she have an accident? Was she okay? A few minutes later, she comes through the door in tears, telling me she could not find the doctor's office. That was the thing that really made me realize that something was wrong. So let's talk about getting lost for a minute. Anybody of any age can get lost. You make a wrong turn, something doesn't look familiar, bam, you're lost. But what do we all normally do? Well, you can pull out a map from your glove compartment, or this day and age, probably more likely from your phone. You can use a GPS device, or you can pull over and ask for directions. And using any of those methods, you're back on your way. But in Alzheimer's, paper maps and phone apps and GPS devices can be complicated and confusing to use. You can pull over and ask for directions, but they're often long and detailed and hard to remember. And these are the reasons that in Alzheimer's disease, it's so easy to get lost. Now let's take a look at another thing that can happen in Alzheimer's, which is losing things, forgetting things. But guess what? Forgetting things and losing things is actually pretty common too. I want you to raise your hand if in the last year you have misplaced keys, glasses, wallet, purse, cell phone. Has that happened to anyone? Yeah, me too. So if this happens to you, how do you know if it's normal or it's not normal? Well, if you were someone who every morning, all your life, you spend 5, 10, 15 minutes, hunting around the house, trying to find, what you're looking for. And now you're getting a little bit older and you're still spending 5, 10, 15 minutes hunting around the house looking for things. Well, guess what? That's probably normal for you and not something to worry about. But if you were always someone who was very organized, never had to hunt around looking for things, and now you're spending 5, 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour hunting around the house looking for things. Maybe you had to buy a new cell phone because it never did turn up. Maybe you had to cancel your credit cards because you never could find that wallet. Well, that could be a problem. So the point I'm trying to make here is it's not only what the problem is, but it's also whether it represents a change from the way things used to be. Now, the third thing that I want to tell you about in this section is about repeating questions and stories. Now, anybody can be halfway through telling a story to a good friend and you say, "Oh my God, I told you this already, didn't I?" And anybody can forget the answer to a question and ask it again. But when there is a pattern of repeatedly asking the same questions again and again and again, or telling the same stories to the same people over and over and over again, that is not normal. That is usually due to that rapid forgetting as we were talking about. And rapid forgetting is never normal. It should always be evaluated. Okay, so that's a little bit about step 2. So now we're going to turn to step 3, which is understand your memory loss. And I'm going to talk about some of the terminology in this disorder that is often quite confusing. So now what I want you to do is to raise your hand or use that thumbs up if you are familiar with the term dementia. Most people familiar with the term dementia? Yes, good. Oh, and I see a raised hand, very good. Raise your hand if you're familiar with the term Alzheimer's disease. Yeah, most people are familiar with that too. Now, I want you to raise your hand if you have a very clear understanding as to the distinction between dementia and Alzheimer's. So that's a little trickier, right? Maybe a few of you, maybe. So let me spend a minute on it because it can be confusing. So dementia is simply a general term that means that thinking and memory has declined enough that it interferes with day-to-day function. And so as a general term, I think about the term dementia sort of like I think about another general term like headache. Now, people can have a headache for a lot of different reasons. You can have a headache from, say, muscle tension pain or a migraine, neither of which are very serious. But you could also have a headache from a stroke or a brain tumor, which obviously are quite serious. And in dementia, it's the same way. So believe it or not, one can have dementia from something as simple as a vitamin deficiency or a thyroid disorder, both of which is actually curable. But one can also have dementia from a variety of different brain diseases, including Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies, which is a type of Parkinson's disease dementia, vascular dementia, which is dementia due to strokes, and there's many other types as well. So dementia is the general term, and Alzheimer's is one type or one cause of dementia. Got it? Okay. Now, let's talk about another term. Are people familiar with the term mild cognitive impairment? Raise your hand if you're familiar with that one. Yes, a lot of people have heard of that one as well. So mild cognitive impairment is present when there's 3 things. The first is someone is concerned about the memory. It can be the individual themselves, it can be their family, or it can be their doctor. The second thing is that when the individual undergoes pencil and paper testing, or honestly in this day, more like telephone testing, yes, indeed, a problem is found. So the concern is confirmed by the testing. But the third thing is that their day-to-day function is fine. And if someone's day-to-day function is fine, then by definition, they do not have dementia. Now, what the studies show is that if you follow people with this mild cognitive impairment over time, about half of them do end up declining and developing either Alzheimer's disease or a similar disorder. But that also means the other half do not. The other half then either stay stable or their memory actually improves over time. You might say, how does anybody's memory actually improve over time? Well, if the reason that their memory was declining was because of depression, low mood, as their depression lifts, their memory can get better. Another very common cause of memory problems are medication side effects. And if the individual works with their doctor and their medications are adjusted, their memory can improve. Okay, so now we're going to move to step 4, which is treat your memory loss. And we're going to talk about both the existing medications that can treat Alzheimer's and also some of the new drugs that are being tested for clinical trials. And some of them are going on right here at our Boston University Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. So before I tell you about the drugs, I need to tell you a little bit more about Alzheimer's so you'll understand how they work. So we believe that Alzheimer's starts with an accumulation of a protein called amyloid. Now, the amyloid clusters and clumps together to form plaques. Now, when I use the word plaque, some of you might immediately say to yourself, are these plaques made of amyloid? Are they similar to the cholesterol plaques that can build up on the arteries in the neck? Or are they similar to the plaques my dentist is worried about that are on my teeth? And the answer is no. Plaque is just a general term for schmutz that can occur anywhere in the body. But these amyloid plaques, which you can see right here, they get bigger and bigger and bigger until they end up damaging the neighboring brain cells. And then inside the brain cells, another protein called tau, T-A-U, the tau gets loose. And the tau is very sticky, and it sticks to itself, and it forms these long fibrils. And these fibrils get all tangled up. So these are the plaques and the tangles that you may have heard about in Alzheimer's disease. Now, once the tangles form inside the cells, it kills the cells. And the cells are normally making chemicals, neurotransmitters, that allow different parts of the brain to talk to one another. And one of the most important chemicals is called acetylcholine. So in Alzheimer's disease, the levels of acetylcholine drop. It's for this reason that the mainstay of therapies are medications that help to boost up the levels of acetylcholine. These are medications that I bet many of you have heard of. Some of you may be taking these medications. These include medications like donepezil, whose brand name is Aricept, rivastigmine, whose brand name is Exelon, and galantamine. All of these are medications that help to raise up the levels of acetylcholine. Now, from the perspective of the individual and their family, what these medications can do is they can turn the clock back on memory loss. And the studies show that they can turn the clock back 6 to 12 months. So what I mean by that is when someone comes into my office and I prescribe them one of these medications, I can make their memory like it was 6 months ago, or maybe even a full year ago. And the earlier they come in to see me, the more likely it is that I can turn the clock back a full 12 months and give them, improved memory function. And the reason that I can do it better if they come earlier is because there are more brain cells that are still living that the medication can work on. Now, I said I can turn the clock back by up to 12 months, but that does mean that, say, 2 years later, yes, indeed, the person is likely to be worse than when I first saw them. But that does not mean that the medication isn't still working, okay? And in fact, if people stop it, they'll often plummet 6 to 12 months worth of memory function in 1 to 2 weeks. And so because of that, as long as the medication had a good initial response, then I pretty much want people to stay on these medications like forever. So we talked about how these medications can turn the clock back. Now, wouldn't it be great if we had a medication that could actually slow down that ticking clock? Well, it turns out that there are medications that are being developed that are currently in clinical trials that can do just that, that can actually slow down the ticking clock. And some of these are medications that are actually using antibodies, which normally the body makes to fight infections. But in this case, the antibodies are made in a laboratory to stick to beta amyloid. And when they stick to beta amyloid, you can actually, they remove the plaques from the brain because the brain's immune system comes in and says, oh, that has an antibody on it. That must be something bad. I'll get rid of it. There's also new medications that are being developed to remove the tau from the brain, the tau tangles. And there's other medications that are working to calm down inflammation in Alzheimer's. So all of these new medications are being developed. Okay, now we're going to move to step 5, which is modify your lifestyle. And we are going to catch up with Jack. Now, Jack has been invited over by his daughter, Sarah, so that Sarah can show her father what having a healthy meal is like. So what meat are we having? Asked Jack. We're having fish, Sarah says, as she dips a brush in olive oil and bastes a large piece of fish. Also on the roasting pan are several garlic cloves and 2 large onions. Waiting for the fish on the serving platter are some avocado slices and lemon wedges. What? No meat? Not even chicken? No, Sarah says. Fish, beans, and brown rice. I want you to see how delicious a healthy meal can be. Jack inhales the aroma of the roasting fish. That actually smells pretty good. Where did you learn to cook like this? I took a class on Italian cooking. These foods are all part of the Mediterranean diet. It's one of the very few diets that has been proven to be good for your brain. And of course, Sarah is exactly right. The Mediterranean diet and some of its cousins that I'll share with you in a minute are the only diets that study after study after study has been shown to be proven to be good for your brain. So the Mediterranean diet includes fish, olive oils, avocados, fruits and vegetables, nuts and beans, and whole grains. So those are the things that are good to eat. So you might be wondering, so what are the things that are not good to eat? Well, before we get to that, here is another diet. This is sort of a cousin of the Mediterranean diet that not only includes fish and vegetables and fruit, but also includes poultry, chicken, and other poultry like turkey. So what are the things you shouldn't eat? Well, I hate to tell you, it's just about everything else. So red meats, fried foods, fast foods, fatty foods, butter and margarine, most sweets, white bread, white flour, white rice, sugar sodas, and diet sodas. All of these things I would put in the category of once in a while food and not every single day food. But before everybody gets really depressed and says to themselves, oh my God, I can never have dessert again, I did want to let you know that chocolate in small amounts has been shown to benefit thinking and memory and mood. You just have to remember that it's what type of chocolate? That's right, dark chocolate. because it's the cocoa that's actually good for you, not so much the sugar and the butter and the milk that they put into the chocolate to make it sweet and creamy. All right, now we're going to talk about exercise. And I don't need a show of hands to know that everybody knows that exercise is good for you. And if I inspire you today, I do want to say that before you lace up your jogging shoes and go running around the block a couple times, I do want you to check with your doctor to just make sure that your heart and your lungs and your bones and your joints are ready for whatever increased exercise you're going to do. But having said that, there's exercise that can work for just about everybody. You can do brisk walking, and in fact, walking is what most of the studies use that I'm going to talk about today. You can also do more than that. You can do jogging, you can do biking, you can do swimming, you can just move in the pool, you can take a class, you can even do arm-only exercises. So even if you or your loved one can't move their feet at all, there are arm-only exercises that can provide a vigorous workout. If you're not sure what the right exercise is for you, check with your doctor and she or he can help. All right, well, let's talk about what type of exercise to do and how much. So what the studies show and what they recommend is to do at least, note that I'm saying at least 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week of aerobic exercise. So what's aerobic? Well, aerobic is any exercise that gets your heart beating quickly, gets you breathing heavily. That's how you know it's aerobic. It's also recommended to do 2 hours a week of exercise that helps with strength and balance and flexibility. And these are exercises like yoga, Tai Chi, Pilates, and certain types of weightlifting. All of these help with strength and balance and flexibility. Okay, let's talk about some of the benefits of exercise. Well, exercise reduces heart disease and strokes. And of course, we know if you have a stroke, that can cause memory problems. Exercise can also reduce your risk of falls. And of course, if you fall and hit your head, that can cause memory problems. But did you know that exercise is actually a natural antidepressant? In fact, it's such a good antidepressant that it actually works better than many medications that are currently being prescribed today. Did you know that exercise improves sleep? Well, you might say, well, that's good, Dr. Budson, but what does sleep have to do with memory? Turns out sleep has a lot to do with memory. And I'll give you 3 reasons why. So the first is what I call the sort of obvious one, which is if you don't get good sleep at night, how are you the next day? You're tired, right? And if you're tired, you're not going to be able to pay attention. And if you can't pay attention, you're not going to be able to learn new things. The second is that during the day, we all make a little bit of this beta amyloid protein that forms these plaques. But at night, the amyloid protein is cleared away. So we need to get a good night's rest to clear away the amyloid protein. The third reason is that sleep helps us to hold on to our memories for a lifetime. So we talked about the hippocampus in the temporal lobes as the place that all the new memories are formed and stored. But it turns out there's another place in the brain where all the older memories are stored. And this transfer process from the new memory file cabinet to the older memory file cabinet takes place while we are sleeping. So we need to get a good night's rest to hold on to our memories for a lifetime. But the most exciting thing that I want to tell you about exercise is that exercise releases growth factors in the brain that actually helps you to grow new brain cells. And it may sound like science fiction, but it's really true. And in the study below, it looked at older adults who either did exercise or stretching. And what you can see in these graphs is exercise was so powerful in growing new brain cells, you could actually see the results on an MRI scan that the size of the hippocampus actually grows when people participate in aerobic exercise. And the amount that the hippocampus increased correlated directly with how much exercise people did, and in turn correlated with how much better their memory got. So people sometimes ask me, Dr. Budson, isn't there some magic bullet out there that can help my memory? I say, yes, there is. Exercise truly is the magic bullet. Okay, now we're going to move to step 6, strengthen your memory. And we are going to catch up with Jack. Now, Jack and his daughter Sarah have gotten into a little argument. Sarah has purchased a subscription to an online computerized brain training program, and she would like Jack to spend at least 30 minutes each day working on it. Can you just try it, Dad? I don't like these things, Sarah. I'm no good at computers. I know you're a computer whiz, but I'm not. Computers make me feel old and stupid. I'm not asking you to become an expert. I just want you to try it. The website says it can make you smarter and make your brain younger. Sarah, I know you're trying to help me, but I want to go to my pottery class so I can finish my project. And then I'm meeting the guys to play hockey. I don't have time for this computer stuff. Can't you miss your hockey game for 1 week? And your hockey game seems more like a social event anyways. You spend 1 hour playing and 2 hours chatting over dinner. So what's wrong with that? We'd like to have dinner after playing, and I'm working on eating better, just like you showed me. Can't you just try the computer, Dad? All right, for you, Sarah, I'll give it a try. But I'm still going to go to my pottery class and then get ready to play hockey. Thanks, Dad, that's all I'm asking. Making sure he is on the right page of the website, Sarah leaves her father to the computer training. Jack looks at the clock. Okay, he says to himself, I can spend 30 minutes on this computer stuff and then have time to get ready for hockey and go to my pottery class. Jack completes the first set of exercises on the computer. Well, wasn't as bad as I thought, although I don't feel any smarter. So what the studies show is if you spend time on crossword puzzles or Sudoku or computer games, you get better at crossword puzzles and Sudoku and computer games. It simply does not translate to overall brain function. But there are some things that do. And guess what? Jack was doing all of them. So some of them we've already talked about. So Jack is playing hockey, in which he's engaging in aerobic exercise. He's also eating a Mediterranean diet that he's learned. He's working on eating better. But another thing he's doing that study after study has shown to be important is he is participating in social activities. He's playing hockey with his friends. He's having dinner with his friends. And he's actually meeting new friends at his pottery class. And speaking of pottery, for Jack, that is something new, something different that he is learning. And the studies show if you want to do something with your brain, cognitively, it needs to be new and different, something that challenges yourself, something that stretches yourself. Those are the things that actually help to improve overall brain function. So for you, maybe you want to learn a language that you've always wanted to learn, or because you can't travel to a new place because of the pandemic, maybe you want to do some research and learn about a new place in the world. And people often ask me, well, I play a musical instrument. Does that count? The answer is it counts if, in addition to playing the same tunes you've always played, you learn new tunes, new songs, or to really do it right, learn a whole new genre of music. That will really stretch yourself and help your brain. So another thing that Jack is doing that helps is he has a positive mental attitude about aging and life in general. And it sounds like pop psychology, but it's been proven to really work. And we think it works for all the obvious reasons. So people with a positive attitude are more likely to take care of themselves and eat right and exercise. People that have a positive attitude are more likely to be social and outgoing. Okay, now what about those brain training games? Well, there's not enough evidence to show that they are of any benefit now. But, having said that, I'm not saying that, you should like watch TV instead of do brain training games. I'm sure that they're better than watching TV. And I'm also not saying that if after a full day of socializing and exercising and eating right and doing new things, if you like nothing better than curling up in your favorite armchair and doing a crossword puzzle, that's awesome. More power to you. I just want people to understand that if you have a choice between like going out for a walk with a friend, wearing a mask, being 6 feet apart, all that stuff, you have a choice between going out and doing some aerobic exercise or social activities, that's better than staying like in a windowless room in your basement and doing a computer game. That's the main thing I wanted to make sure you know. Now, another thing that we have put into the book is we have a whole chapter on different memory strategies. So we can help you to pay attention more through mindfulness training, to remember better by repeating information out that's spaced over time, make connections, do visual images. You can use the method of loci that the Greeks used to remember long speeches. You can invent catchy rhymes to remember things in time. We have strategies to retrieve a name of somebody or to remember a new name of someone that you've just met at a cocktail party. We have specific strategies that you can use for all these different types of information. We also talk about all sorts of different memory aids that you can use. So you can find it more easy to remember where you put like your keys and your glasses and your cell phone and things like that. If you always put it in the same table or tray or a bowl, you can remember your medications better if you use a pill box. You can certainly remember appointments better if you use a calendar or a planner. And we talk about all sorts of similar memory aids like this, including lists, reminder notes, using smartphone technology. And these are things everyone can do. And we do have a few golden rules for using memory aids. And the first golden rule is don't delay. So if you've gone through the trouble of putting an alarm on your phone or your watch to remind you to take your medication, when the alarm goes off, don't delay. Take your medication right away, or you might forget. Second golden rule is keep it simple. So if I inspire you tonight and you think, I'm going to go out and get organized. I'm never going to miss another appointment. I'm going to buy a calendar for my kitchen door, a calendar for my office, a calendar for my desk, a calendar for my purse. Don't do that. Don't get 4 calendars. That's going to be really confusing. You're going to have to copy appointments from one calendar, to another. You may mix things up on the wrong date or the time, or you forget to copy one over and it'll be a disaster. Keep it simple. Just have one calendar, carry it with you everywhere, and maybe take some pictures of it with the smartphone to back it up in case you lose it. And the last golden rule I want to share with you is make it routine. Now, a lot of these memory strategies and memory aids do take work. They take effort to learn how to do it. But if you use these aids and strategies every time, what happens is they become a habit, and then they're easy to do. So make it routine is our last golden rule. Now, step 7 is plan your future. And in this step, we talk about, what do you do if you're having some memory problems? How do you keep doing all the things you enjoy doing in life? How do you keep working if you're working? How do you keep doing your hobbies that you're enjoying? How do you keep driving? And how do you do all these things safely? We also talk about, how do you know when is it time to retire from that job? How do you know when is it time to hang up the keys and let someone else do the driving? So those are the 7 steps to managing your memory. And I would be very pleased to answer any questions. So I'm going to try to unmute everyone, and people can either type questions into the chat or feel free to just shout out. You can go ahead and raise your hand too if your video is on, or use the thumbs up. But anyone can just shout out a question if you like. Go ahead, Anita.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Are you able to address any lab work or imaging that would help with diagnosis?
Sure, absolutely. So the individual's regular doctor should do a number of basic lab tests to look for infections and blood abnormalities. So this would include things like a complete blood count. It would also include things like electrolytes, kidney function tests, liver function tests, sugars, hemoglobin A1C, which measures sugar over time, things like that. Then there are 3 special tests that the doctor may not do unless they're looking for memory problems. So 2 of them are vitamin levels. We like to make sure that vitamin B12 and vitamin D, D like David, D like doctor, are good. And then we want to measure the thyroid as well. So we want to look at the thyroid function. So those are the laboratory tests that every doctor should do. And in fact, we list all these things in the book. In fact, one of the reasons we wrote the book is so that if you go to your doctor and your doctor says, "Oh, Anita, all my patients your age complain of memory problems," don't worry about it. I want you to say, "Wait a minute, doctor. It says here in page 74 in Budson's book that you can't tell me my memory is normal until you've done pencil and paper testing that looks at my memory, you've talked with my family, you've done these labs, and you've done a CAT scan or an MRI scan." And speaking of the CAT scan or MRI scan, there does need to be one of those 2 tests done to look at your brain and make sure that there's no problem with there. Was that helpful, Anita?
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Again, feel free to just shout out or write it in the chat or raise your hand, whatever you like. Please go ahead, Annette.
I have Alzheimer's on either side of my family. And I followed my mother all the way through with the testing and all that. So a lot of this is obviously, I now have a second cousin who is in her mid-70s who has it and probably has had it for longer than most people would recognize. Her significant other has taken her to the end of Alzheimer's, Dr. Bredesen's program, which, having read the book, to me sounds like a lot of spaghetti against the wall. So I'm just curious if you've encountered people who've gone to that program. And I mean, I've heard a lot of different things on it.
Yes, yes. I have read Dr. Bredesen's book,
Yeah.
and I can very clearly say that about 1/3 of it are standard things that I recommend too, like he recommends exercise and Mediterranean style diet.
Yeah.
Then
Brain
about
games.
then about 1/3 of it are things that like might be true or not proven, like things like, you know, turmeric, curcumin, you know, some of the things found in curries. Like, I would say there's not enough data to know if something like that is helpful. And then 1/3 of what he recommends is absolutely off the wall and is crazy. And it can be harmful, like
Expensive,
chelation therapy.
very expensive.
Yeah, not, yeah. So,
Like
Extremely
what?
expensive, yeah.
yeah. So what are the things that are off the wall, Anita, you're asking?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know this
so,
person.
so these include things like chelation therapy. He
Oh.
has people like remove their silver fillings from their mouth, recommends chelation therapy, recommends ketogenic diet. These things are not good. And I'm sorry to hear, Annette, that they're charging a lot of money. And I
Oh,
do.
there's nothing that is sure. The one thing I will tell you, the chelation therapy, my father had an experience. Years ago, they used to have the storefronts where, you know, chelation therapy, you go to the talk and you can have mercury, you're going to get it taken out. He went for it. He swallowed the bait and ended up in the hospital with clots.
Yeah.
Killed him. So we went after the doctor, but they are no longer recommending chelation therapy for mercury, and she has a higher mercury count. But what they're doing is they have found there's some drug that is they are getting compassionate care approval.
Yeah, so Annette, I'm going to just interrupt you and just say again, Dr. Bredesen's stuff, like I said, 1/3 of it is standard, 1/3 of it is possible, and 1/3 of it's off the wall.
Yep.
And the fact that they're charging large sums of money for it, you know, I think that tells you what they're all about. And I think it's just too bad.
It is.
And I think it's just too bad. Okay, Martha, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yes. Does a disease such as dementia or Alzheimer's run in a family? Is it genetically linked?
Yeah. So what the studies show is that if you have a family history like father, mother, sister, brother, it does increase your own risk 2-fold to 4-fold. So to put some numbers on this, the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease at age 65 without a family history is 3%. So if that is doubled to quadrupled, that means the risk goes up 6 to 12%. So on the one hand, that's a big increase in risk. But on the other hand, you still have an 88% chance of not having Alzheimer's disease. The other thing I want to say is that if you look at everyone with Alzheimer's, half the people with Alzheimer's have a family history, but the other half do not. So everyone is at risk for Alzheimer's disease, whether they have a family history or not. But like I said, a family history does increase your risk 2 to 4-fold.
Thank you.
Other questions? Anyone who doesn't have their video showing, you're welcome to jump in and ask a question too, if you like. No? Good. Well, for those of you who either came late or haven't done it, I hope you can see our passion for trying to help people improve their memories, help people learn more about Alzheimer's and related diseases. We would love to have you sign up to receive our newsletter and to tell you more about our center. Maybe you or a loved one would be interested in participating in research, or maybe you have other folks. Maybe you have a community and you'd love for us to come and give a talk like this. Obviously, right now we're doing them by Zoom. Maybe sometime in the spring or the summer we'll do them in person. I don't know. Hopefully we'll get back to that soon. But we'd love to participate with you more. And Annette, do you have another question or comment?
Just one sort of plug. My parents were lucky enough to live in Hendersonville, North Carolina, near Asheville. And Ginny Templeton, who I'm sure you know, has a group down there, Memory Cares. And it is just one of the best programs I've ever seen in terms it's for the family to understand what's going on, to help them. And I don't understand why we don't have more of those around, because it's just phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, so you know, I do think there's actually a lot of good programs. If you contact us either by filling out the form, or Samrana has just put into the chat our email, which is joinadc@bu.edu, and she's also listed our website. If you email us, we can tell you about programs like hers that are in the Boston area. And Glory has a question. Is there a blood test yet? So there actually is a blood test that is being developed, Glory. It is something that has been reported from some of the big international conferences. The Alzheimer's Association International Conference was held virtually this year in July. And there's a new blood test that was reported there that looks very, very promising. So we have our fingers crossed that this is going to be validated by some larger studies and will end up being FDA approved. So I actually think we're approximately a year away from a blood test that will be pretty good at being able to figure out if somebody has Alzheimer's disease or if they don't. And now we just need a treatment so that if you find it, you know, we can really stop the disease in its tracks. I shouldn't say it, we do have treatments, and we talked about those treatments, but we don't have a cure yet. But if you join us at our Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, hopefully with your help, we'll develop a cure. Thank you for the positive comments on the chat. I appreciate that very much. Other questions? Claire, did you have a question? So you have to unmute yourself. There you go, Claire.
I just wanted to say thank you, and that I definitely see, as a 57-year-old woman, my grandmother had it, my mother had it, and I just worry for myself. So thank you for those suggestions. Made me feel good when I eat my blueberries every day.
Absolutely. I eat blueberries too. They're delicious and they're good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, fabulous.
Thanks.
Okay, it's my pleasure. And Gloria, I know you joined a little bit late. We're going to be doing other programs. And if you contact us through either that Google Doc or the email, or give us your phone number, we'll